let's get right into the U.S. Women's National Team stuff. First, we'll start off with the most recent Summer Series game, which is their friendly against Portugal. So, a couple days ago, they ended up facing up against Portugal. Who did Coach Vladko Andonovski put out for the lineup? Pretty much exactly what you would expect. Starting in goal was Alyssa Nair. Moving on to the defenders, which was Kelly OHara, Abby Dahlkemper, Becky Sarbrun, and Crystal Dunn. Then moving on to the midfield with a bit of a shakeup, Lindsay Horan playing in the sixth spot because Julia Ertz is out for the summer series with her MCL sprain. Then we've got Sam Mewis and Rose Lavelle. Then lastly, the forward line, which included Kristen Press on the right wing, Alex Morgan in the striking position, and Megan Rapinoe on the left wing. So overall, this game didn't really have a whole ton of shout about. Going into the game, I guess I should say first, Coach Vlatko is undefeated going into this game. The U.S. hasn't lost since he has started his tenure, if I'm not mistaken. Or wait, hang on a second. No, yeah, they haven't lost since his tenure. They've drawn a game, and I believe it was against Sweden pretty recently. However, their goal difference has been plus 60. They've outscored their opponents 64 goals to 4. And none of those 4 goals came against the U.S. in the first half, which is, you could take it a lot of different ways. It could show that the U.S. just beats all of their teams in the first half right away, or it could be shown as to when they do crumble, it's in the second half. So a lot of different ways to take it. I say that I look at it still that they're the greatest team in the world of women's soccer. So take that for what it is worth. But anyways, overall, the game ended in a 1-0 victory. U.S. ended up coming out on top in this game by a much slimmer margin, I think, than anybody expected. My prediction was a 4-0 victory with Megan Rapinoe, Sam Mewis, Alex Morgan, and I think KRISTIN Press scoring. I only got 1 out of 4 of those right, obviously, with Sam Mewis scoring, but it shows you how hard it is to predict score lines. But it was really strange for the U.S. having so much possession. This game, I believe it ended up being 65% possession. It was probably one of the more competitive games I've seen the U.S. play this year because they just didn't do a lot with the ball and the scoreline was so close. With the U.S., I think that nobody played particularly poorly overall. I wouldn't say anybody had like a terrible game. The one thing I will say that I noticed though is Alex Morgan, I think, had a pretty rough day. She only had 10 touches in the entire first half, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe Ali Wagner mentioned that all of her other teammates had at least 31 touches in the first half, and she only had 10, which when you're a striker, that's got to be maddening because you crave having the ball. You want to have the ball so you can score, and she just didn't really have a ton of it in the first half. So a little bit off that day, which it happens to everybody. And in addition to that, she had a couple chances that were right in front of goal, but both went a little wide. Like I said, not every striker is going to be completely on every single day of the week, so it's normal. I expect she'll adjust for the next game against Jamaica on Sunday as well. And I guess I was really surprised with Alex Morgan because for the Orlando Pride, she's been absolutely crushing it. Her club form has been out of this world. She's leading the Orlando Pride and the NWSL in goals. She's got 4 so far, and she's also got an assist, if I'm not mistaken, to add to that tally as well. So I expected her to be kind of a shot out of a cannon, not a shot out of a cannon, lethal in this game against Portugal. And to be fair, if she converts those 2 chances, we have a whole different conversation because then she gets a brace and the U.S. win 3-0. So you can take that for what it's worth. I'm not really too worried about her talent or her play. She's still one of the world's best. It was just surprising, I guess, to see her have a bit of an off day and not really too much of the ball. So that's to be expected, and that happens sometimes even with the best of players as well. What else am I missing from this particular game? I don't believe that any one player really helped or hurt this case for the Olympic roster this summer. I think that Coach Vlatko Andonovski has most of the roster decided by now, and at this point, he's just kind of putting out his best lineup and seeing how they do, because when you're this close to a major competition, you transition at some point into a phase where you go from trying to figure out who you're going to put into your lineup into what is my best lineup and how do they perform. So I think he's got a bit of he wants a bit of time to see how that works out, hence him what I think is putting out his best lineup for this game, and I suspect he'll do so in the next game. I think that if Julia Ertz and Tobin Heath don't go to the Olympics, that will be the lineup for the starting 11 for the Olympics this summer, so take that for what it's worth. But it's expected that Julia Ertz is going to be coming back, and there's a chance that Tobin Heath will be coming back too, so we'll see. I One thing I do want to mention with the lineup, it was really interesting to see Lindsay Horan play in that sixth spot. I had wondered going into the game what a lack of Julie Ertz's presence would be like on the team, and I would say that it didn't affect them a whole lot. The only reason I say that is because of the fact that Julia Ertz is an expert in the midfield and is really great at winning and retaining possession. And with the US having the majority of the possession, I don't want to say it mutes that point because it doesn't. But then again, I would say that the US had much less of a lethal presence in the midfield because when Julie's in the midfield, there's no stopping her. She'll get every ball. She'll have really great precise tackles. She'll facilitate play really well. And I think they missed her to a point, but it wasn't as drastic as I thought it would be. I think it would have been a much more interesting conversation if the US had been missing Julie Ertz against a France or a Netherlands or even Canada. I think that becomes a more interesting conversation overall. So time will tell and see how that goes. I would make the argument that Julie Ertz is the most indispensable person in the roster, but at the same time, the best teams in the world, which I think the US is, learn how to cope with losing major players like Julie, and they've got the talent to do so. So I think that they will adjust. It'll just take a little bit of time should Julie not return for the Olympics this summer. So something to keep out and watch out for as time goes on. So what were some other big points for the game? I want to give a shout to Portugal's goalkeeper, Pereira, because I think that she kept Portugal in this game by and large. She had a really good save against Roosevelt. Every ball that came to her, she held on to. She didn't bottle anything, which if you make mistakes against the U.S., they're going to make you pay for it. And Portugal didn't make a ton of mistakes. So I got to hand it to them in that respect. I thought they played a good, solid, competitive game, despite only having 35% possession, which isn't particularly great. So big shout out to Pereira for that. The first subs of the game where Carroll Lloyd went on for Alex Morgan, which is to be expected given my aforementioned points about Alex Morgan. Emily Sonnet for Kelly OHara, and then Sophia Smith, for Megan Rapinoe. I thought the subs were not particularly exciting in this case for a few reasons. I think Carroll Lloyd is the most interesting of the subs, and I think it was probably the most appropriate of the subs because clearly Alex Morgan was struggling this game and they need to make a change. Plus, with how much the U.S. likes to high press, Carroll Lloyd tends to thrive in that kind of environment. So putting her in to get these big moments, and she was probably one step away from being on side and getting that big moment, and it made a whole ton of sense for me in particular, so I'm glad he made that change. And I think Carly's going to the Olympics this summer. I want to be clear about that too. Emily Sonnet for Kelly OHara, I didn't really love that particular change. I don't know why. It just wasn't a very profound one, and I didn't really read much into it. Same thing with Sophia Smith for Megan Rapinoe. I didn't really read much into either of those changes other than just giving players fresh legs. I know Kelly OHara's had injury issues the last few months. I'm not too sure about Megan Rapinoe. I don't know if Vladko's just trying to rest people or not, or if he wants to see what Sophia Smith and Emily Sonnet can do. So that's very well possible. I don't know the man, so I can't ask him, unfortunately. Moving on, so the most exciting moment of the game came in the 76th minute when Sam Mewis scored a header off of a corner. The corner was a beautiful service from KRISTIN Press. Sam Mewis got on the end of it and headed it right into goal. Very clinical finish. I think that goal just kind of adds a little bit of oomph into the status that Sam Mewis is currently possessing in the world of WOSO, and that status is Sam Mewis is the world's best player right now. I think that it's undisputed. Every time she's out on the field, she dominates in most aspects of her game, scoring, dribbling, passing, defending, and nobody's doing what she's doing right now, and she's scoring most games that she's in, if not assisting and providing excellent service and defending ability too. So Sam Mewis just continues her awesome run of form and continues to show why she's the world's best. Moving on next to the next sub of the game was Tiernan Davidson on for Crystal Dunn. I thought Tiernan Davidson had a pretty solid appearance for the 20 minutes that she was in, give or take a few minutes. She had a couple good runs down the left-hand side, and I conventionally know Tiernan Davidson as a central defender. However, I know she's had plenty of experience in the outside back position, and I thought she played quite well there too in this case. It shows that she's got some multi-dimensionality to her that perhaps Coach Andonovski's looking for. So maybe that's a shout for her to be in the Olympic roster. Do I know that for sure? No, not really. But I just thought she played well, and it was worth noting in the notes of this game as well. And then the last sub of the game came with Lynn Williams being subbed on for KRISTIN Press. I read nothing into the sub at all, mainly because it was in the 89th minute and nothing else really happened. There's only 4 minutes left in the game at that point with added time, so not really too much in there for that. The one thing I do want to say now that I'm thinking about with the subs, I'm really surprised that, well, actually, I want to say that I'm surprised that Coach Vladko Andonovski didn't sub in Katerina Macario or Christy Mewis or any other midfielder to give some of the midfielders fresh legs. But then again, I'm thinking that he probably wanted to keep in Roosevelt Samuels and Lindsay Horan purposefully to see how they would do without Julie Ertz, and he's going to want to maximize that amount of time as much as he can. So that might be a reason why he ended up not making any midfield substitutions. So the more I think about it, the more it makes sense that he didn't make any subs. So that leaves a whole ton of other slew of options on the bench, and take that for what that's worth, ladies and gentlemen. Let's see a couple more points on this game before I move on to the match preview for next one. Other than, I guess I'll just give my general thoughts and notes on the game. The game overall, like I said, was pretty uneventful with only one goal in the U.S. The U.S. had so much possession, they didn't really do a lot with it, so it made for a lackluster game. I do have to say, though, and I have to kind of temper myself a little bit, when you have 65% possession, you have a really good day because you don't let your opponent really score. And as far as I know, I don't believe Portugal really had any good, solid chances this game. So the U.S. defensively, I thought, performed great, and that seems to be the consensus for a lot of the games that they play. They always defend really well, and that seems to be consistent in this case. Other than that, I would say that the one other point that was really shocking to me in this game was the fact that I think it was Ali Wagner mentioned this. In the first half hour of the game, Portugal had only completed more than one pass, no time at all. They did not string together 2 or more passes at all within the first 30 minutes. So it shows you how much the U.S. like to press and how much they are on the warpath of the ball. They wouldn't even let Portugal complete 2 passes in a row for the first half hour of the game. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Like I said, the U.S. didn't do much with it, but the fact that they don't let their opponents have the ball and thus limit their scoring opportunities, I think is really strong, and it's a big testament to how well they press. So that just blew me away, to not let your opponent string together 2 passes at once in the first half hour. That's crazy. So overall, sorry, I'm looking at my notes one more time. Oh yeah, the last thing I want to mention is KRISTIN Press was awarded Woman of the Match, if I'm not mistaken, which I think is totally warranted. She had a pretty solid game. She got the lone assist off of the corner. And off of that corner, it was actually the first corner she took all game, because Megan Rapinoe took every other one. So good coaching change, you could say, in that case. And I think KRISTIN created a couple of good chances and had some good scoring, or not some good scoring runs, some good runs up that left-hand side too. Just when I think she couldn't get deadlier on that left wing, she continues to flash new moves that surprise me. So good on KRISTIN Press for that overall. So, ladies and gentlemen, that kind of completes my thoughts on the Portugal friendly. What did you guys make of the game? Whatever you think, feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts.